Today we're looking at two well-known vehicles, the Subaru Outback and the Honda Passport. We'll do a quick drive through the evolution of each and share some side stories. And if you're looking to buy used, we'll see which model years are good to consider and which ones you should avoid. So hop in and let's go for a ride. You might be surprised to learn that just how closely linked these cars are to each other. For example, did you know that Subaru had a hand in the development of the Honda Passport? But before we get to that, let's first look at the Subaru Outback. Love it or hate it, this is a station wagon. They're not as popular as they once were, and many car companies no longer think of the station wagon as a viable market and even produce any. But Subaru views it very differently, and the Outback is proof of it. Did you know that the station wagon was initially used to transport people and luggages to and from train stations and country estates? Because of this, these vehicles are called estate cars in the United Kingdom and station wagon in the US. Today, little has changed with the general configuration of the station wagon, since it still provides the same basic features needed to transport passengers and cargo. The modern wagon is a body-style variant of a sedan, but instead of a trunk, the wagon has a roof that extends over a shared passenger cargo space. The first Subaru Outback was a derivative of the second-generation Subaru Legacy. It was unveiled in 1994 in New York. It shared almost all of its components with the Subaru Legacy, but it had a small difference in trim. And unlike the Legacy, the Outback added a partial off-road plastic body cladding, used a raised roof, and later raised the suspension to provide additional ground clearance. Decades ago, the automotive world developed a classification system to categorize different cars. In general, the main criteria included engine displacement, car dimensions, number of passenger seats, carrying capacity, amongst other things. As for Subaru, most of the company's models did not fall under any of the established category groups. That's because Subaru cars were characterized by a combination of features from different classes. Later, when Subaru began to introduce models with four-wheel drive, the classification of their cars became even more complicated, since almost no one had previously produced passenger cars on such a platform. Just think back and try to recall the first Subaru Forester. Even experienced motorists couldn't easily squeeze into it any classification. It was a station wagon with an SUV-style design. The Forester had modest dimensions and a relatively small ground clearance. And that's how the concept of an all-terrain wagon was born. In a way, we can consider this the starting port for models that would later become known as crossovers. The Subaru Outback was one of the first cars to successfully demonstrate that a practical station wagon can also have good cross-country ability, refined handling, and the dynamics of a sports car. And that's how the Outback was the first of its kind, essentially in a new class of sports wagons. And the industry took notice. Did you know that every Subaru is equipped with a boxer engine? In fact, it's fundamental to the Subaru brand. Unlike conventional inline or V engines, boxer engines have pistons that move horizontally, allowing it to send power directly to the transmission. This configuration helps to minimize vibration so that the vehicle can run smoothly and efficiently. At its core, every Subaru is a boxer, and every Subaru is also all-wheel drive. Many car manufacturers may view all-wheel drive as a luxury, but not Subaru. This self-explains why Subaru has consistently been recognized as the brand with the best value for the money, especially when you factor in fuel, maintenance, insurance, and all other costs. These cars are likely to be among the cheapest over time. That is why Subaru is one of their best vehicles in the country and worldwide. 3 out of 7 models in the top picks poll won in their categories. This shouldn't be surprising, since a whopping 96% of all Subarus built in the last 12 years are still in service, which gives testament to its reliability. But now let's look at the Honda Passport. Initially, it was a rebadged Isuzu Rodeo, which was a mid-sized SUV made from 1993 to 2002. But in 1993, the Honda Passport became Honda's first entry into the booming SUV market in the US. Interestingly, both the first and second generation Passport were produced at Subaru Isuzu Automotive plant in Indiana. Most people don't know this, but the Passport was a result of a partnership between Isuzu and Honda. That's because Isuzu wanted to discontinue passenger car production after a corporate restructuring in the 1990s. Meanwhile, Honda wanted to enter the SUV market in North America. Funny enough, Subaru had a stake in Isuzu, so that's how Subaru was part of the production and sale of the Honda Passport. The partnership lasted 10 years, ending in 2002. That's when Honda discontinued the Passport to launch its in-house engineered Honda Pilot. By the way, speaking of partnerships, this isn't the first case of mutually beneficial collaborations. In fact, it happens a whole lot more than most people realize. It doesn't sound intuitive incentive for competitors to collaborate, but that's what they do. For example, in 1998, GM and Isuzu formed D-Max. This was a diesel engine joint venture. Then GM increased its stake in Isuzu to 49%, effectively gaining control of the company as a major stakeholder. Now, with the majority and upper hand, it swiftly appointed an American GM executive to lead Isuzu's North American operation. This was the first time a foreign executive had ever held such a high position at Isuzu. Soon after, GM and Isuzu announced plans to share distribution networks, and for Chevrolet to have a hand in promoting Isuzu products. But in 2002, Isuzu initiated a plan to recapitalize and convert debt to equity to prevent bankruptcy. This led GM to acquire 20% of D-Max, 60% of Isuzu Motors Poland, and Isuzu Motors Germany, plus the rights to 3 types of diesel engines from Isuzu, all for some $425 million. GM also paid $85 million for a 12% stake in the newly recapitalized company. But soon after, in 2006, GM ended its investment in Isuzu. It sold all shares to the Mitsubishi Corporation, which thereby became the largest shareholder in Isuzu. That same year, Toyota acquired almost 6% of Isuzu, becoming the 3rd largest shareholder. Collectively, the car companies collaborated on diesel engine manufacturing, emissions control, and other environmental technologies. But that didn't end the relationship between GM and Isuzu. The year 2007 saw Isuzu and General Motors update the LCV lineup with a more powerful 3-liter common rail diesel engine that had much more torque and power than before. Also, Toyota and Isuzu agreed to develop a 1.6-liter diesel engine for Toyota vehicles in the European market. In 2016, Isuzu and Mazda agreed to collaborate on the production of the next generation pickup trucks for Mazda for markets outside of North America. 3 years later, in 2019, Isuzu and Volvo signed an agreement whereby Volvo would supply UD trucks to Isuzu. So finally we come to this year. 3 companies, Isuzu, Toyota, and Hino, who's owned by Toyota by the way, announced a strategic partnership. This resulted in Toyota acquiring almost 5% of Isuzu shares, and Isuzu, in turn, acquired Toyota shares for an equivalent value. The 3 companies announced a new joint venture called Commercial Japan Partnership Technology Corporation, which would focus on developing fuel cells and electric light trucks. Toyota made up 80% of the new company's shares, with the remaining 20% being split between Hino and Isuzu. So next time you see a car nameplate from a famous brand, don't assume that one brand developed or produced it. Anyway, back to the Honda Passport. In 2018, Honda wanted to expand its lineup, so it announced the return of the Honda Passport. After a 16-year hiatus, the Honda Passport returned as a 2019 model. It was a 2-row mid-size crossover, somewhere between the smaller Honda CR-V and the large 3-row Honda Pilot. If you're looking to buy a used Honda Passport or Subaru Outback, which year should you consider and which year should you avoid? Let's start with the Honda Passport. Overall, the 2019 model appears to be much more reliable than the older models, based on volume of complaints and severity of repairs. There were some minor reports about the electronics and the climate control system, but nothing serious or critical with the vehicle otherwise. It also received higher than expected reliability scores. So all in all, that year seems relatively solid. If you're looking for an earlier model, well, this means we're looking at models older than 20 years. The older models had 2 of the biggest problems a car can have, like a faulty transmission and corrosive frame, and both problems occurred after 100,000 miles. Transmission repairs could cost up to $4,000. The average cost of repairing a rusted frame will be around $1,000. Personally, I wouldn't recommend a Honda Passport from its early years. Moreover, this was one of the reasons why Honda discontinued producing the Passport in 2002. But even in 2010, there were still 150,000 Passports that were recalled due to corroding frames. The recall notice informed customers that the issue could also have impacted the Passport's suspension, which in turn may affect the car's handling, potentially deeming it unsafe for the road in the worst cases. As far as the Subaru Outback is concerned, you might want to be cautious with the 2015 and 2013 models. The top 5 complaints about the 2015 Outback include loss of control due to a problem with the steering column, problem with the electronic stability control system, transmission oil leakage caused by deformation of the seal cap on the propeller shaft yoke, failure of the braking components of automatic pre-collision warning system, and problems with the trailer hitch assembly. Plus, the 2015 model has also been known to have problems with some of its interior accessories and electronic windows and windshields. The 2013 Subaru Outback has its own share. Common problem was excessive burning of oil that resulted in engine failure. Under normal situations, the car's engine will use about half a liter of oil every 5,000 miles. But one Outback driver claimed that his Outback consumed 26 liters of oil over 26,000 miles. He was one of several who had similar complaints. Typically, the main cause of excessive oil consumption can be due to defective piston rings. Damaged or defective piston rings allow oil to seep into the combustion chamber. As a result, the engine requires more oil to function properly, and carbon deposits form on the cylinder and piston rings as well. If you're looking to buy used, then the '09 model is one of the best to consider. That model year Outback had a reputation for being a dependable mid-size crossover. And if you're looking for even more power, the Outback R Limited with its 3-liter V6 engine will give you the boost you need. But now you tell me, which do you prefer? The Subaru Outback or the Honda Passport, and why? Do you have any funny or horror stories with these cars? Please share your comments below. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. Thank you for your support.